Hi, this is Kevin Trainer, and I welcome you to my tutorial on creating a DTD for a publishing-oriented XML document. This is primarily for my class up at UWM, XML for Libraries, but some other people may have found their way here on YouTube, and you're certainly welcome to stay. This is the same document we're going to be working with today that we worked with a couple of weeks ago when we were working on the design and authoring of a publishing-oriented XML document. And it's a press release from the Synchrosoft company. And they're the makers, they're our good friends who make the Oxygen XML editor that they've been so kind to give us an attractive deal on, so we could use it in our class. And so we just took one of their press releases from October 2015. In fact, the one that announced a new version of the XML, of the Oxygen XML editor, version 17.1, and we marked it up as a press release, sort of imagining that this is maybe what they had done before their XML document got transformed into the HTML page that we visited when we found this text. So let's take a look at what we have here. The root element is press release. It has a date attribute. And then the children of press release are abstract, then main content, then aftermatter. And these are popular, divisions of content, but certainly not universal. It's just pretty much what I had been thinking of at the time. Structurally, I think this captures the structure of the press release. As for what people call these things, maybe they wouldn't call it main content. Would they call it aftermatter? Well, some people would. Okay, but we're reveling in our power as new designers of XML applications, and we're realizing that we can really call these things anything that's one, sensible, two, makes them useful for the purpose that we intend, and three, is appropriate for the sensibility of the people who are going to use the tag set. Okay. Okay, so far we have no DTD at all. Okay. So in fact, if we go up to the icon on the toolbar to validate the document, it's going to tell us it's not associated with any kind of schema. Let's look. Click. There's no schema or DTD associated with the document. Whoops. We're going to have to associate a schema. So first, let's create one, okay? So let's create a press release DTD. So I'm going to go up to the menu. I'm going to click on File, New. And I don't like to use the things in recently used because maybe you and I haven't recently used the same things. But if I go to the grouping for new document, I'll see that document type definition, it's not too far down. It's, I think it's the fifth one. So highlight that and click Create. And as we've seen when we were creating the DTD for a data interchange document, this particular product puts an XML declaration at the top of the DTD file, even though it's officially not an XML document per se, because the language that we write the DTD in is the DTD language, which is not an XML application. It's actually something that was borrowed and adapted from SGML, and it's the DTD language. So I usually get rid of the XML declaration, which I think they have in there for some handy do-gooder reason, but I take it out just to emphasize to you that this is not XML. And now I want to save this. I'm going to save this in the same directory as the XML document itself. And the XML document is called oxygenpressrelease.xml. And I'm just going to call this press release, press_release.dtd. And typically when I'm using file names, I don't use capitalization as being significant, because in some operating systems it is considered significant and in others it's not. So I do better, I think, to keep my file names in all lowercase, words separated by underscores. That works in all three operating systems, and you don't run into problems that you get confusion about potential differentness or sameness of the way things are treated based upon capitalization. So I'm going to save that. I don't have anything here yet. So here's something that I like to do when I'm doing these DTDs. I like to look at the documents side by side. And there's a feature of the Oxygen XML editor that works really well for this. And I'm going to go up to the menu and click on Window. And a little more than halfway down, there's Tile Editors Vertically. And now I can look at both of these at the same time. And it's pretty helpful stuff. So I can see that the first thing I'm going to need is I'm going to need a declaration for press release. Okay, so let me do that. So when I start to type, I get some helpers. I want to declare an element, press release. And here I did use camel case capitalization, because within XML, a capitalization or the case of a character is significant. And we can rely on that because it's part of the specification for the technology. So here, a press release with a small p and a capital R is just what we want. Okay? And we're going to say what the content specification is. And sometimes what I like to do is open up the left paren for the content specification on that same line and get a blank line here. And then on the closing line, I'm going to have close the content spec. And I'm going to just indent one. I'm going to say, in a press release, I have an abstract, comma, a main content, okay. And then what do I have after a main content? Well, I have an aftermatter. So I have an aftermatter. Okay, that looks good. So I've got the three of those. And again, what have we said here in this content model or content specification? Well, we've said it has three sub-elements: abstract, main content, aftermatter. They're required, so they always occur, and they always occur in that exact order. Okay, and that's consistent with the way I think this works. And you'll also recall from the last time we created a DTD that in addition to declaring the parent, we need a declaration for each of the children. So we need a declaration for abstract, main content, and aftermatter. And one of the things I find easiest to do is to just say in the beginning that their content model is #PC data, plain old XML text. Now that's not going to be true, but it's an interesting kind of a starting point. So why don't you explore that kind of approach with me? So it's a declaration for an element. The first one is abstract. And it's PC data. And close the parens. And we're going to do the same thing for main content and aftermatter. Uh-oh, we didn't want to do that. Let's undo that. So we're going to copy that, paste it again. So the first of these sub-elements is abstract, then main content, then aftermatter. Okay. So now we have a starting point. I mean, we're missing a lot of the content model for the document, but there's at least enough here to see if we have connected with the document. We have the DTD connected to the XML instance document, which of course we don't yet. So one of the things I find helpful is when I leave the DTD, I want to make sure I save the contents. And I'm going to come over here to the XML document, and I see that there's no doctype that is, doctypes, if you remember, they do two things. They identify the root element, and they point to the DTD, except if it's an internal doctype in which they contain the DTD. But it's a better practice to keep the DTD and the XML document separate, so we're always going to point to it. And the easiest way to add a doctype in this Oxygen XML editor is to go up to the menu and click on Document, and then Schema, and then pick Associate Schema. And so here we're doing this, and I'm just going to click, and the schema I want is press release DTD. It's a DTD schema. So I click on that, and then I'm going to go down and click on the open button in the lower right. Probably not showing up on your video. And it's pretty important for me to not have these long path names included in the what becomes the pointer to the file, because we're going to move these directories around, and so we don't want these path names here. So we want this box checked, use path relative to file location. Okay, so when we do that, even though it knows that this press release DTD, even though it knows the directory that it's in, it's not going to use it. Schema type DTD, click OK. And here, a couple things. First of all, the doc type appears in the document. And we know that it's connected because we have a lot of errors. Okay. Now, we might just have one error that would say that it couldn't find the DTD, in which case we'd probably just have one red box over in the right gutter there for the left editor. Okay. So let's prove to ourselves it did validate. So click on the left editor, click on the check mark for validate. We can see validation failed, 24 errors. Okay. But let's look at what's underlined, and you can see that press release, the element name itself is not underlined, which means it recognized it. The attribute date is underlined, and we haven't declared the attribute for that, so it's not going to recognize it. And then within that, abstract isn't underlined with the red squiggly underline, so that got recognized. Main content got recognized. And then aftermatter got recognized. So I know that I've made the plumbing of the XML document to the DTD work with the doctype. Okay, and it's really a major achievement. So I tend to work from the top down, okay? And what I want to do is I just want to clear the errors as I go down. So the press release element has a date attribute that's not been declared. So I tend to want to put those immediately after the element. So let's add an at list, okay? And the one thing I have to remind myself is first I have to say which element it's for. So at list for press release, okay? And then typically I put each attribute in the at list on its own line. I indent, so it's called date, and it's a plain old PC data. And is this required or optional? Well, I'm going to say it's required. So I start to type £, and you can see it's going to tell us what it can be, and what I want it to be is required. Right there. And let's save it. And you'll notice here that I have an error, and this is because it's not PC data, it's C data. Oops, made a mistake. And now you can see how the syntax coloring has fully engaged, and the red underlines have gone away. So that looks good. Okay, something I think I've mentioned before in the tutorials, but maybe not. If we look up at the tab for the editor that we're in, you can see after the file name, pressrelease.dtd, there's an asterisk. In this product, and a lot of products, means you have unsaved changes. So if we go up to the toolbar and click on the diskette icon, as soon as we do that, as soon as we save, it'll clear that change. So you can see that the asterisk is gone. And one of the challenging things when you're trying to coordinate two files is making sure that you save your changes to one before you go back and change the other. And I typically want to save changes to both before I try to run a validation. Okay, so let's go back to the XML document, click on the checkmark icon to validate, and you'll see that we cleared the red line on the date attribute of press release, which is just what we wanted to do. So now I just want to go down to the next problem that I have. And it's a little bit hard to see all the problems that I have. So I'm going to try to squeeze this over here a minute so we can see more of the text. And it looks like para is not working because it's not recognizing the sub elements that are part of the mixed content of para. Okay. Oh, and on top of that, it doesn't even like para. So we have, let's first get it to recognize that there are paragraphs. Okay, let's go over here. So in abstract, let's say that we can have multiple occurrences of para. Para asterisk. Okay. Now, I just want to point out, para asterisk is my style, but I'm going to try a slightly different style here because Typically, if we're going to have a paragraph, we want at least one, right? So let's see what would happen if we said plus. Okay? Some people feel that using a plus here has the advantage of triggering the Oxygen XML or other XML-aware editor entry helpers to generate at least one empty paragraph when you add, for instance, an abstract. And you typically want at least one empty paragraph before you begin to author it. So here I'm going to do this a little differently than I've done in some of the other examples I've shown you, just to show you that there's not one correct option here, but certainly two good ones. Okay, so now we've got para. We've got no declaration for para. So let's make sure we get that. So we're going to have an element declaration for para. And let's just say for the beginning that it can only contain text. So # PC data. That's where I thought I was a couple of minutes ago. All right, so the squigglies have cleared out over on the DTD right side here. So I think I've got all my syntax errors gone. Let's save it. And let's come over to the XML document and click the checkmark icon. And you can see, oh, the para elements are within abstract are doing okay. All right, that's nice. But then the mixed content elements like product standard are not doing okay. So it's going to take some more work. What about the para element within main content? Well, it's not working because we haven't changed the content model for main content to say that it can contain one or more paragraphs. So let's go get that fixed. Okay, so main content says PC data. Let's change this and say para plus, just like we did for abstract. Okay, now because we're reusing the declaration for para, we don't have to create another one because we're sharing the one that we've already created. All right, let's save that. Let's go back over to the XML document, validate, and we'll see that the para elements within main content have cleared. So that's good. And let's see, aftermatter, okay, doesn't have a complaint as it is right now about para because it's got a complaint about heading. So let's not worry about aftermatter quite yet. Now I think we can go back up and let's see if we can clear all the errors out of abstract and then with main content. Okay, so what are the mixed content elements, things that I'd like to call modifying elements that are surrounding the text inside of a para here and within abstract? Well, product and standard are two. Let me just scroll over and see if there's anything else. No, product and standard will take care of it. And both product and standard have URLs. Okay. And here, when I go to declare these, I'm going to have to say, do I have to have a URL for a product or standard? And here, when I look at how I'm using these tags inside of the document, if I look through the document, every time I've used a product, a standard, an organization, I have a URL. So even though I don't have to, even though I could say it's an optional attribute, here I'm going to decide that we believe that it's a required attribute. Okay? So let's start out by getting product done. Okay? So we've got para. Okay? So the first thing we have to say is that, oh, a para can contain things other than just plain old XML text. So we're going to say XML text, or put the old or bar in there, which is on the PC keyboard, well, on the Mac keyboard too, it's the uppercase character that's just above the enter key. So it's going to be PC data or product. Okay. And then you'll remember that just on the outside of the right paren, we have an asterisk that says that this choice happens 0 to many times, over and over again. Okay, that looks good. Now we need a declaration for product. So let's go down to the next line. Put in a declaration for a product. Okay. And the text that's in a product is plain old PC data. So let's give that a plain old PC data declaration. But it can have a URL attribute. And you will notice, if we just take a peek back, you will notice that in this document, URL is in lowercase. And case is significant. So let's say, okay, we need an at list for the element product. And we're going to say it's an at list for product. Okay. And I tend to put the declaration for each attribute on its own line and indent. And this is a practice that I picked up from books and training, and it seems to be a very popular way to do this. And it's URL, and it's C data, not PC data, and it's # required. Okay. So that looks good. The only thing we're going to need to do now, so we have the product sub-element with its proper URL attribute and the content model saying that it can only hold text. Let's do a save for the DTD, and let's go over to the XML document, and this product problem should clear. So let's validate, and the product problem did clear. See, that's nice. So now we've got a couple of standards there. And I myself am not above what I call cloning, which is copy, pasting, and changing things. So in addition to product, we can have standards. So let's take the content model for para and add an or bar and then standard. And then the declaration for standards is going to be exactly like product. Okay, so I'm going to take the element and atlas declarations for products, and I'm going to copy them. And I'm going to paste them right underneath. And then I'm just going to change the element names. So where I say product in the element declaration, I change it to standard. And where I say had said product for the atlas declaration, I changed that to standard, and that should take care of standard. So let's go back. I saved that. Let's go back over. Got a couple of standards happening inside the abstract text. Let's validate it again. It didn't work. I hate that. So product, standard, product, URL. Oh, let's save and validate. There we are. And there was a case where I wasn't getting the clearing up of the problems that I had with the validation in the XML document. And I was able to resolve that simply by saving the XML document first. So one of the things that's a little tricky that you should keep in your mind is that there are times where it seems to me that I can get away with not saving the documents and going back and doing the validation and having it behave like I would like it to. But there are times when that doesn't work. So the safe thing to do is to save both the DTD and the XML document before you run the validation. Okay? Now, somebody who's more intimately familiar with the product could probably tell you why that's the case. But for me, it's just a bit of a mystery. Okay, so let's see. That took care of the first paragraph in abstract. Now we're looking down at the paragraphs in main content. And those ones seem okay. Let's go down a little bit further. And let's see where else we have something to do. And the first real problem that I see, a red squiggly line. I've got several red dotted lines, and it's maybe a little bit hard to tell on your video, but those are for the spell checker. Okay, but the next red squiggly line is URL. So it looks like I'm saying that I just want to mark up a URL because I can tell where that is, and perhaps what I'm going to want to do when I'm transforming this into HTML using XSLT, perhaps I'm going to want to take the URL and form an HTML link with an A tag, and I'll be able to do that because I know that this bit of text is a URL. Okay, so what does that look like? Well, we have to do two parts to this. One is we have to say that the URL can occur within a paragraph. So that's one more or option for a para. So or URL, okay. And then we have to say we need an element declaration for it. So let's do that. And element, and it's URL, lowercase. And it's just the content model is plain old PC data right now. So PC data. Okay. And I think that's going to solve our URL problem. Let's look. So we save the DTD. Let's come over to the XML document. Let's validate it. And the URL has cleared. Now, a lot of times when you're trying to find the problems over in this XML document, it's just kind of easiest to go over to the right column and look where the first red block is. So I'm going to click on that, and that should spin us up to the first problem that we have. That's the second problem. Okay, and those are in aftermatter. In aftermatter, we're still saying it's just plain old PC data, so that's not really going to help us. So what is in aftermatter? Well, I see we have a heading, and then we've got a paragraph. Okay, so maybe a heading and then one or more paragraphs. Okay, let's do that. Let's go over to the DTD and let's change, okay, what we're going to have here. So first of all, we're going to have the element heading, comma, and then we're going to have para. And let's say again, one or more. So let's say para plus. Okay, and then we need a right paren to finish the content model. Okay, that's good. Now, heading needs a declaration in its own right. So element its name is heading. And let's say for now that we don't intend to mark up the content that's in heading any further. So let's just say plain old #PC data. Okay, that should take care of it. And para is already defined. So unless we have some different sub elements that we need to add to the content model for para, we should be okay. And that turns out to be the truth. We do have to add one, but let's just see. So I don't see any errors in the DTD, so let's click on Save. And let's go over to the XML document and validate it. And if we look at what's lighting up, it's this organization is lighting up twice inside of the first para. Okay, and so let's go over to the DTD and look at the content model for para. And it can have sub-elements for product, standard, and URL, but not organization. And then let's look at the markup over in the XML document for organization. It looks like it's got a structure similar to product and standard in that it can have a URL attribute. Okay, so let's, after the URL possibility, let's add organization. Okay, and then let's look at the declaration that we did for product. Let's do the same kind of thing for organization. So I'm going to copy the two declarations, the element and the atlas for product, copy those, and I'm going to put them down after standard. I think that's a good spot for them. Okay. And of course, I'm going to have to change the name. So let's change it to organization and change the atlas the same way, organization. Okay, so now we have a parallel construction. And you do this a lot. So this kind of cloning of the definition for standard to use for organization is, I think, it saves you typing, it eliminates errors, and is generally a good practice. So let's, looks like we've saved the changes on press release DTD. Let's go back to the XML document and validate. And let's see. Doesn't look like organization has been saved. So let's save everything here. Let's make sure we're saved everywhere. Now let's do a validate again. And now I was having a trouble of getting the errors to clear from organization, but by saving and clicking in the XML document again, then when I validated, I got rid of the problem. So some of these kind of habits are helpful. Exactly why it didn't clear the first time, I don't really remember. And then let's see what's left. Well, we have one error left. We can see over in the right bar. It's this originator. Okay. And it looks like it has an organization in it. Okay. And here you're really going to have to decide what your intent is as a matter of editorial policy. Okay. And what I'm going to suggest you do is that you say that the contents of originator, which we don't have there yet, I guess that should go way up on, it's a sub-element of press release. But then the question is, what's the content model for originator? And right now it's an organization. So will it always be an organization? No, it might be an individual. Okay. Might it be plain old text that we're not going to mark up? Okay. Well, I think that's entirely possible. There are times when you're authoring these kind of documents and you're only marking up organizations that are of particular interest to your organization. You're only marking up a person who's of particular interest to your organization. If it happens to be some just run-of-the-mill organization, like somebody else's corporation, perhaps you're just going to type in the text. So I think you'll be safest here for originator saying it's mixed content that can hold an organization. We're not using a person here. We're not marking up any other person elements in the document. And my inclination is to not worry about that yet. So I'm going to say we can either type in the name of an organization that we don't want to mark up because it's not a special organization to us, or we can type in the name of the organization and then surround it with an organization element that allows us to provide the URL. Okay, let's put that into practice. Okay, so originator comes after matter. So go over to the DTD and add originator. Okay, and then let's go down to the bottom. Got maybe an extra blank line there that I don't like. Let's go down to the bottom. And let's start by saying that it can contain just text. So let's say that this is the declaration for originator. And we're going to give it the simple content model of #PC data. Okay. Now this is going to clear one validation problem over in the XML document and create another one. So let's save the changes to the DTD. Let's go over to the XML document and click on it, and then let's click validate. And as you can see, it was expecting to get just plain old text inside of originator, but we have an organization sub element. So it's like, oh, we can have an organization here as well. So let's turn this into the declaration of a mixed content element where we can say the first choice has to be #PC data. Logically, you could imagine that it could be in the first position or the second or the third. Practically, in terms of the way the XML tools work, if you're going to declare mixed content, #PC data has to be the first of these several choices. So #PC data, and then let's just say organization. Okay, and then you'll remember, we have to remember to go outside the parentheses and place an asterisk to be saying this is going to happen over and over. And I'm going to put a couple of blank lines there so we can see that better. All right, so save the DTD, come over and click on the XML document and click on the validate button, and the document is valid. So what we've done is we started out with a whole bunch of invalid content, and we've built the DTD, and we've built it in a way that takes advantage of mixed content. It takes advantage of being able to share the para element between aftermatter, main content, and abstract. And I think that's a pretty elegant approach. And then the final thing that we did that I think has a lot of forethought in it is, even though we could have gotten away with saying for the content model of originator that it has the sub-element organization, then you'd always have to mark up the text in originator with an organization sub-element. we decided that we were going to support mixed content. So if there was an originator who maybe was an individual or some organization that we didn't want to mark up because we didn't want to call special attention to them as a matter of editorial policy, then we could just type the name in there. Okay? And maybe it's good to prove that we would have been able to do that. So let's just let's close the DTD for now, and let's just take this organization sub-element. I hate it when I do stuff like that. Let me get it right this time. Organization, and delete it. And then let's just put plain old text of Billy Bob's Manufacturing, Inc. Okay? And could we have done that? And I believe we could have. So let's save this, validate, and that validates just fine too. So sometimes you want to show a little more forethought in the content model that you use, because maybe the example that you have in hand has a sub-element like organization, but maybe you're not always going to have one. And then of course I want to change this back. So I'm on the Mac, I'm going to hit Command Z to undo, Command Z to undo again. And there's all my content back in its glory. And I'm going to save and validate, and it validates. So for those of you in the course, you're going to be going on to do one of these yourself. And I wish you luck. And I'll see all of you back here next time. Bye-bye.